afternoon. First of all, thank you all for coming, for being here. I'll tell you up front, this is a very tough, probably the toughest press conference I've had to give since being in this position, but we'll get through it. Let me start by saying that this event has been one of the toughest events that I've ever had to work in my entire career. Losing a co-worker and a friend like Adam puts a hole in your heart. And there's nothing out there that can ever replace that. And as bad as I'm feeling, I can only imagine what his family and his other friends are feeling. My heart goes out to them. And although this is a very tough time for our agency, for our profession, for our city and our state, I would be remiss if I did not thank our partners and friends in law enforcement. As you can see, they've been with us since this thing has begun, and they've continued to be by our side as we've continued this investigation. Going through something like this challenges your core. But knowing that you have people in your corner that you can count on helps make insurmountable situations possible. And that's exactly what happened here. Their friendship, their resources, their help, we would not have gotten it done without our fellow law enforcement partners. I know that many of you have questions regarding this investigation and the circumstances surrounding Master Trooper Gobert's death. I assure you I have some questions as well. And one of the toughest things that I've had to realize with being an agency head in this position, especially during these type of events, is that I've got to allow my personnel to perform their duties. I have to allow them to do their jobs without me bombarding them with a ton of questions. With that said, I also want to thank everyone that's working on this investigation. And I want you all to know that the personnel that are performing these duties are under immense pressure, not only from a professional standpoint, but from a personal and emotional standpoint. Each time that they touch any part of this investigation, they're reliving Master Trooper Gobert's death over and over again. And yet, they work to perform their duties anyway. I could not be more proud of them, the work that they do, and our law enforcement profession at this time. While this horrible chain of events may appear to be simple to some, and while the investigation and some of the things that you question may appear to be simple, I can assure you that there are many factors that influence our response to situations and events like this. And although not every situation is the same, the information that's presented to us at the time is what we use to respond to these type of events. In this particular event, like most others, our number one goal is identifying and neutralizing any imminent threat. And for our partner agencies in Livingston and Ascension and EBR, that threat began on October 9th at approximately midnight when Matthew Meir is suspected of shooting 2 people in a residence in Livingston Parish. He then stole a Chevrolet Silverado from Livingston Parish. At approximately 12:30, surveillance cameras showed that Master Trooper Gobert backed into a location on Dutton Road. We believe that he was finishing a crash report, and computer analysis indicated that Master Trooper Gobert made his final entry into the database at 2:21 a.m. It is not uncommon for our troopers to complete their paperwork after working a crash in that manner. At 2:30 a.m., Mir was picked up on cameras entering the Dutton Road location with his headlights off. That's where we believe that he ambushed Master Trooper Gobert while he was seated in his unit. We also believe that Mir came to the Dutton Road location in order to stage for the shooting that he is expecting of committing at a nearby residence in Ascension Parish. He then shoots and is suspected of killing one person at that residence and critically wounding another. Afterwards, Mir left the scene in that Silverado. Just after 5 a.m., one of our Troop A troopers was en route to back up another trooper when he encountered Mir on LA 42 west of LA 73. The Silverado was in front of our trooper, and our trooper activated his emergency lights in order to notify the driver to move to another lane. Upon seeing the lights, Mir begins firing at our trooper, then accelerated at a high rate of speed. At that point, our trooper initiated a pursuit. At this time, the outgoing night shift and day shift all diverted their attention to this pursuit and this incident. The vehicle continued further and stopped in a shopping mall at a parking lot on LA 73 at Hoosier 2 Road in East Baton Rouge Parish, where Mir continued to fire at our trooper. The trooper returned fire and was not struck by any of the rounds by Mir. However, one round struck the center of the trooper's windshield and another round struck the grill. We are continuing to investigate to see if there are any other rounds located in that vehicle. Detectives later discovered Mir's unoccupied vehicle at a dead end at Hoosier 2 Road with gunshot damage. Mir successfully escaped from the pursuit and entered a large, heavily wooded area in that general area. Troop A shifts were changing shifts at the time. The outgoing shift stayed over to begin actively engaged because they were actively engaged in that particular pursuit. As a note, during the response of pursuits, trooper-involved shootings, and manhunts, radio traffic was suspended for emergency broadcast only, and units were not calling themselves off-duty or making any other calls that were not of emergency nature. It is our radio protocol during these types of events for our personnel that are not involved in the immediate event to not communicate on the radio. So even if Adam was fine, because of the protocol in place, he would not have communicated on the net unless it would have been of an emergency nature. Several local agencies assisted in the search, which continued throughout the day. However, it was later in the day, at about 5 p.m., that a co-worker found Master Trooper Gobert unresponsive in his vehicle. As the manhunt for Mir continued into the evening hours, law enforcement got closer to the location and he fired his weapon several times during that particular part of the chase. Mir was apprehended shortly after 10 p.m. without further incident. Mir suffered a canine bite and had a suspected self-inflicted gunshot wound to the leg. He was taken into custody, received medical attention, and was subsequently taken to a medical facility where he is undergoing surgery and is expected to be released later today. Detectives obtained a search warrant, an arrest warrant, in East Baton Rouge Parish for Mir for aggravated flight from an officer, attempted first-degree murder of a police officer. Additionally, arrest warrants obtained in Ascension Parish for aggravated flight from an officer, attempted first-degree murder of a police officer, and first-degree murder of a police officer. The investigation into the murder and both shootings of the civilians are being conducted by the Livingston and Ascension Parish Sheriff's Offices. Couple of notes. The time between the murder of Master Trooper Gobert and the time he was found is absolutely unacceptable. And the results of this chaotic situation contributed to just that. However, the safety of our troopers, our officers, and our personnel is paramount. Due to these types of incidents and the nature of these events that occurred on October 9th, it created the perfect storm by which this happened. Following the shots fired, called the pursuing troopers, the radio traffic was held, which means that only extreme life or death radio traffic is communicated. This allows for the responding units to communicate effectively and efficiently in a safe manner. Due to this, units were not calling themselves off-duty or any other manner. This event has shown that redundant methods are necessary to ensure the safety of all of our personnel not actively engaged in these type of events. System improvements are currently underway, and they're currently being evaluated for immediate implementation utilizing expanded GPS coverage, dormant activity alerts, and redundant personnel tracking by supervisors and our communication staff. This is exactly why we sought to implement our computer-aided dispatch system that we're currently in the midst of implementing. We've known that we needed to make a change. We're in the process of making that change to better not only our technology, but increase the safety of our personnel. And as we continue to do so, we understand that we're not there yet. This has been a very long and hard road. There is no worse feeling than to lose a coworker, lose a friend, lose anyone. But I can tell you that we're learning from this experience, we're getting better, and we're creating a better system for all of our employees as well as our public. My heart goes out to the families of those other victims. The acts committed by this guy is unimaginable. It's horrific. I cannot imagine what those families are going through, but I am feeling their pain. And that's why I felt we did, and we had to do everything possible to remove him from society. And that's exactly what we did. So thank you for being here. I'll open it up to questions.
When he was apprehended, was he shooting at the dog or was he shooting at officers? He got the gunshot to the leg. Can you tell us about that?
Well, at that particular time when we were engaged in the pursuit, we can't tell. He was shooting in the direction of the officers. So regardless of whether it's the dog or the officers, it's the same.
In a time frame, when Gobert was killed to when he was found, do we know approximately how long of a time frame that was?
We do not have the exact time of death, and we are looking at that time frame. What we can tell you is the time frame by which Master Trooper Gobert entered the area in which he was killed, as well as the time that Mir, as I indicated, around 2-something that morning was when Mir entered that area. So we know it was between that time, or we suspect it was between that time and the 5 o'clock time in which our other officer came into contact with Mir. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a protocol in place for end of shift as to when the shift ends, everybody's supposed to check in with their supervisor?
Well, typically that's done again over the radio or over the MDT. However, because of the incident that was ongoing with the officer-involved shooting, as I mentioned before, our protocol states that if the net is secure because of an emergency situation, then no, the troopers then go off on their own, and that's generally our protocol.
Ms. Cassidy, WBRC, who was it that sort of realized that Trooper Gobert had been unaccounted for?
It was one of his co-workers, but we also received a call from a neighbor in that area who notified us that they had observed a state police vehicle or a vehicle with a driver unresponsive.
Was he a part of the initial search for Mir?
Excuse me?
Was he a part of the initial search for Mir?
No, ma'am, not that we know of at this time.
And were there any witnesses? I know you said there was a neighbor who notified him that there was a vehicle there?
We have not identified any witnesses to that particular shooting involving Master Trooper Gobert.
I know we don't know yet a motive for this, for what happened, but a recent report shows that ambush attacks on law enforcement up 91% this year. So I just would like your reaction to that about law enforcement being targeted. And can you also just give me your reaction on the training and how you want to neutralize that risk?
Thank you. Yes, there has been a significant increase on ambush attacks on law enforcement. Therefore, a myriad of reasons. And at that particular point, when you look at the motives, at the heart of it, it doesn't matter. You're taking one life for no justifiable reason. We're working with our communities. We're trying to make sure that we identify situations whereby if there is someone that has a complaint with law enforcement, that we communicate with them. And I think as we continue to build the trust with our communities, it is our hope that our communities will continue to assist us in identifying those members that are not only threatening law enforcement, but threatening our communities as a whole, because we are a part of the community. So I think it's very important that we consider that and that we continue to communicate and build that trust with our communities. As far as the training, that's something that we are working on. But I think it's important for us not to take this all-out extreme tactical approach. You know, that's where the trust, working with our communities, identifying those particular situations, using intelligence-led policing to identify those that threaten and harm not only law enforcement but other community members come into play. And I think as we begin and continue to do that, then we use that information effectively to identify and neutralize those members. So that's kind of where we are.
Can the sheriff give his reaction to that?
Well, you're citing Fraternal Order Police report where 91%
Yes.
increase in law enforcement officers involved in ambush-style shooting, which I think is 51 officers over the last year, and we know 13 of them have died. Well, you know, we try to tell, and we preach it, that, you know, law enforcement is still a noble profession. And you hate to see that a broad brush painted on all law enforcement. listen, we take responsibility for our actions, and we know we have to do that. I just think there's a narrative out there now and about law enforcement, and I think that may be some of it. Each situation has to be taken individually, and we all have to have responsibility. Our law enforcement officials raise their hand and take an oath to protect and serve. We generally do a whole lot more serving than protecting, but on nights like this past weekend, we have to do a lot of protecting and protect our community. So I don't have all the answers. I know it's out there. I know it's real, and we have to do what we have to do to try to make sure that we are out in our community. Situations like this, it's not a time to where we circle our wagons, right? We get out in our community even more. The Central Parish Sheriff's Office, Livingston, EBR, State Police. I hope we demonstrate it to the public and our citizens. Listen, we all one, and our mission is clear: is to protect and serve our community. We take our own safety secondary, and we know when we raised our hand and took that oath that it may put our lives in danger. And this is what our troopers do. This is what our deputies and officers do. And it's sad to read that narrative where there's such an increase. And we need to be a part of turning that around. Training regiments do change, and we're a big part of that. I'm proud to say that we're going through an accreditation process, and we try to live by the best standards and the best policies and the best procedures. And we hope that our community will do the same thing and take personal responsibility for themselves also.
Well, another question for the sheriff, because I noticed when the colonel was listing the charges for the suspect, you didn't mention about a murder charge for what happened in the center. So will he be charged for the death of what happened to the person in the center?
Yes, those were just the charges of my agency. The sheriff has his charges as well, and yes, he will be. And let me just also speak, when we go through these situations, when we talk about life, our troopers are human. Our officers are human, like everybody else. They're part of our communities. And you hear me say that time and time again, because oftentimes when some of the public look upon us, they look upon us as a tool or an inanimate object, when in actuality, we are a part of the community. We feel the same pain when we feel loss, if not more so. So I think it's very important for us all to realize that we're all in this together.
Yeah, can I just clarify? So investigators believe that Go was shot before the shooting in Florida?
That's what we're working to find out. We're not exactly sure, so I don't want to give you bad information. So we are looking to determine whether it was before or after, but as we get that information, we will definitely put it out.
Okay, and was he shot through the glass of his vehicle, or do they believe the suspect entered his vehicle and which weapon?
Well, because of the investigation, we're going to have to withhold that bit of information.
Okay.
Thank you very much. We'll release some more information later on.
The protocol that they were talking about, that at end of shift, you do have that in place, but because of this, you didn't have to do it because it was life or death traffic only. But is that something that's going to change? Like, you're talking about immediate protocol, can you go into a little more detail that, hey, be it handwritten, be it physical, that a lieutenant needs to see you before you leave? Can you talk a little more about that?
Yeah, so when I talk about our technology, one of the things that we are in the process of implementing is computer-aided dispatch, CAD system. We haven't had that. This is the first time we've had that since the existence of state police. So prior to that, someone would have to call in and or type on the MDT whether or not they were 10-7, as we call it, or they were end of shift. We are putting things into place because of the advancements of technology whereby we can monitor that information. We can not only monitor by our supervisors, but we will also be able to monitor it through our communication. So if we have an officer or a trooper that's perhaps that haven't communicated via the radio, and even if we have a situation in place to whereby they cannot because of our protocol, we will have the technology to whereby they should be able to do so over their computer. And if we find that they have not communicated, then we can input those protocols and parameters to say, hey, if someone hadn't checked in a certain amount of time, we need to check on them. Those are the things that we are implementing right now. those shifts generally end about 5 in the morning. So as this other event is unfolding with the officer-involved shooting, we now have end of shift. So we have 2 shifts that's actually working. We had the shift ongoing, as well as the shift that was working. So I thank you all. I know you have many more.
I'll get to you guys.
We're just asking about the GPS system and if it is on true Covair's unit.
We'll look into that.
Yeah, we are, I can assure you, we're investigating that, and as we get that information, we're going to push it out. Okay, just bear with us. Thank you all.